Hey YouTube, Jonathan here, and for this video I wanted to take a look at a portion of the board in Axis and Allies 1942 2nd edition that doesn't tend to get a whole lot of attention from me because I am often focused on taking out Germany quickly if I'm the Allies, or taking Russia out quickly if I am the Axis, which means that even as Japan I tend to focus on coming in this way. Well, and as the U.S., I might play around a little bit in the Pacific, but I'm mostly focusing on helping England over there. Well, in this video, we're going to be looking at the Pacific. If you specifically are, let's say you're going after Japan as the U.S. for whatever reason you've decided that that's what you want to do. And then on the flip side, if you are Japan, what steps can you take? Most specifically, I'm going to be looking at fleet positioning in this video. So in fact, let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go, so we can see a little bit better. So what is an ideal position for the US player? Now things are going to change, ships are going to move around, so we're not going to be running simulations. But as I was kind of thinking this over, there are a couple criteria that I want to set. The first one is that whatever the position is, it needs to be within one turn of any new units, which means we can quickly get units to wherever it is we need to go, or we can counterattack if Japan, moves in to where we're at. We can cause them to be hesitant, because even if they have a force that can beat ours, they will see that we can then counterattack with what we have over here. So even if they win the battle, then they might get wiped out on our turn. So that's step one. Step two is it needs to be a territory that threatens as much Japanese production as possible. So when to think about this, let's just do this systematically. So it can't be any more than 2 spaces from here, which means that we've got this, 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 and this. And over here we're actually moving further away, so let's not worry about those. Now, an argument could be made that says, well, if we swing up here, we can potentially help the Soviets. We're threatening the Japanese home islands, therefore this is the best option. Well, that might threaten the home islands, but chances are, especially early in game, we have the one transport. We're probably not going to be able to take Japan with one transport. If we can, then, well, that person has no business playing Japan if it's, the second turn of the game. You could say, let's move here. That still puts us within one space of Japan. We can consolidate both our fleets if nothing happens to these guys over here. But same issue with Japan. We are potentially within a second move of Manchuria, but now we are further away from a base of operations and right next to where Japan's going to be putting stuff. We could potentially hit over here, which is good. Unless we really need to hit the Soviet Union hard, I would favor positioning our fleet here over this. The issue is that Japan is very easily going to be able to put down new units because we're so close to the capital, both land forces and navy. So I am a little bit hesitant early in game for that. Later in game, when your objective is actually taking Tokyo, then of course those sorts of positionings are ideal. But early in game, probably not what you'd want to do. So you could hit Wake, and that puts you within range of the Philippines and New Guinea. But I actually prefer the sea zone down here, 44, the Solomons. It actually puts you out of range to hit Japan. So if that's really what you wanted to try and do, then of course you're not going to be able to do that. But like I said, early in game, you really shouldn't be thinking about that as a possibility. Japan is not going to leave itself open, and then you've moved your fleet somewhere where it can't be effective. if you were to try and do that. So I prefer the Solomons for a couple of reasons. First, on England's turn, it can move its fleet up here, take out that sub, hopefully, which means that Japan is either going to have to devote forces to take them out, which means that maybe this navy's over here and this navy's here and this navy's doing who knows what up there. Well, hopefully England takes that one out, so the rest is just right there. And Japan is all spread out, even if they take out the British Navy, which is good for the United States. And if Japan does move over here, your entire fleet, both what's off the coast of Hawaii and the Pacific coast of the U.S., can swing down here, should be able to easily take out whatever fleet Japan has right there. And then you are ideally positioned to hit many of these money islands. You can't quite hit them all, but you can hit New Guinea, you can hit the Philippines, you can hit Borneo. And when you move in, let's say you move into the Philippines, if you can secure that, now you can pretty much hit the entire coastline as well as Tokyo itself if you wanted to. Now, it helps if Japan... Oh, and if Japan doesn't go after England's fleet here, then by you consolidating in this sea zone that England can also get to, because England can't get, up here, you now have a stronger defensive position. So Japan is less likely to attack you. And if it has spread out its navy, maybe if this navy is too far this way, it might take it an extra turn to get back over here. That gives you a big advantage, potentially, at least for a short period of time. The more Japan spreads out its fleet, if you can consolidate quickly and then pick off one of their individual fleets, you do have that advantage. You do have the extra defense from England, which will make Japan a little bit more wary to attack you. That is a cruiser and a sub down there. It's not huge, but it's 2 more units. It's a 3 and a 2. I'm sorry, a 3 for the cruiser, 1 on defense in this version of the game. But it's still something, and it's units that can soak up hits while your battleship, while your fighter that are better on defense are able to keep rolling round after round. So I definitely like to do that. Pick off a Japanese fleet if you can. If not, the fact that you're here and that you can hit these, Japan now has to do some positioning so that you can't just move in. Because let's say you're not strong enough to destroy whatever fleet that they have, but because you got England with you and because your units, the fighter and the carrier, for example, defend better than they attack, you're stronger defending your fleet is. And so maybe Japan isn't strong enough to destroy your fleet, even though you're not strong enough to destroy them. If they have to defend multiple islands, they could put their entire fleet protecting one, and you could sweep in and take the other one. And if you're, like I said, if your defense is too good that their fleet will be annihilated if they attack you, then that's still an advantage for you. And if you wanted to build more ships over here, so while they're worrying about what you're doing here, now you've got reinforcements coming in that you'll eventually group together, you can. If you are going after Japan, that is definitely a good approach to have. So consolidate with England early in the Solomons, and then use that as your springboard so that Japan has to defend as much as possible. And if there's anything, whether it's psychological, things you're trash talking around the table or whatever it is that you can get Japan to spread out its fleet. Maybe this fleet comes around over here, without leaving yourself open, without shooting yourself in the foot. But if there's anything that you can do that encourages them in one way or another to separate its fleet, that's going to make you all the better. And when I say separate, I mean separate enough that they can't instantly on the next turn, zoom them all back together into one territory. Far enough that it's going to take at least a turn, at least 2 turns to get them back together if possible. That's huge. And oftentimes early on, a Japanese player, because they have so much navy, they aren't thinking about that too much. And if they do put themselves in a spread out position, take advantage of that for sure. Now, what about Japan? So my advice for Japan is, there's a lot of things that you need to do, a lot of things you should do, and you want to be aggressive, just like Germany. The Axis in total needs to be aggressive. But keep in mind where your fleet is and where the American fleet is, or where it could be on the next turn, and make sure that if you need to, you can quickly consolidate your fleet. Don't let that hold you back to the point that you don't effectively use your fleet, in different theaters, but just be aware, what do the Americans have if they consolidate somewhere? Do you have enough that's in the immediate theater that you can deal with that? And can you, if the Americans split up their fleet in half, or, one third, two thirds, or something like that, are you positioned? Can you destroy one section of it so that you don't have to face their entire fleet all at once? So, of course, you want to be looking out for those things. As far as your positioning goes, for Japan, assuming that your fleet isn't needed along the coast, if you're dealing with the U.S., I like to position the fleet in, if you have to, in the Philippines, because that you can reach everything if you need to that way. But I actually prefer, if possible, if it's practical, to position more out here in the Caroline Islands, or maybe in Wake. And the reason for that is that the U.S. doesn't have many islands. I mean, it's got Hawaii, but that doesn't really matter. It's one production. So the further you can move the front this way, the easier you can protect these islands. Now, you want to be somewhere that is not within 2 spaces of the Pacific coast of the U.S., because if it's, that close, then the U.S. could put stuff down and then immediately move the next turn. So you always have to be aware of what they're putting. And, I mean, you would be within 2 spaces if you moved to Midway, 2 spaces of Japan, but you can't as easily get down here to protect this. And that's why Wake Island is a nice shield. It's right here. All the money islands are behind you. You're right in the U.S. path. It is going to have to swing around. Now, it can swing around this way, of course, to the Solomons. But then you're in a position where if you wanted to, you could swing down this way. Just like I said in the American video, be aware of what's waiting for you here. Or you could choose to swing up this way. If this fleet isn't as strong defensively, wipe it out, and then force the Americans into a position where they have to, or where they might feel like they have to swing up and attack you. Maybe they'll decide, oh, we're going to take a money island, and that's fine, but they aren't going to be able to get any more units, any more transports into the fray. And then if you build a few more ships, you can consolidate your fleet, somewhere, and hunt them down. That's getting too many rounds in, and depending on what the U.S. player does, that's going to influence what you do. But to me, Wake Island is an excellent position for the Japanese fleet, assuming it's not needed over here. If you do need to be further back here, the Philippines offers excellent positioning because you can protect all the money islands. You can get up pretty much anywhere along your coast. In fact, you could go up this way and get all the way along the Asian coast, and you could get over to India. So as far as an overall theater positioning, the Philippines, potentially you can swing as many places as you, that's pretty much maximum, you can hit the maximum number of territories from here. But if it's the U.S. Navy you're worried about, then positioning a little bit further this way, Carolina or Wake Island, is really a much more ideal position, because you can keep reinforcing. All your money islands are behind you. If the U.S. splits its fleet, which as soon as it moves away from here, if it does build more navy, it has split its fleet, and you can start picking off different pieces of it. That is the way to go. Now, if you're going to need transports, now transports, of course, can't defend or be taken as casualties, but you're probably, at least your surface fleet predominantly can be, in a single position. You're probably, unless you're building factories along here, you're going to want transports, moving guys all across here wherever they're needed. But as far as your capital ships go, to hold off the U.S., this is the way to go. If you are Japan, and I really like Solomon Islands for similar reasons, just on the other side, if you are the United States. So that is a rundown of Pacific theater naval positioning as I see it. This is, like I said, not a theater that I pay too much attention to. I kind of consider it secondary. Perhaps that is to my own detriment. It just depends. But I was looking at that part of the board recently and started thinking about it and decided I wanted to make a video. Let me know what you guys think. And as always, if you want to see a video on a specific topic that I've not yet covered, just let me know and I'll see if we can work something out.